Packer Nation, welcome to yet another episode of the Packers on the Rocks off-season edition, to which this one will feature the bad man himself, Sir Charles Aaron Rodgers. So with that said, let's go ahead and kick this puppy off. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, bud. A little nightcap tonight.
We're definitely tying one on and heading into the wee hours of the night. We'll just tell the Packers on the Rocks listeners that this is a midnight episode,
There
the
you go.
Twilight one.
I like it. Um, yeah, this is all the craze, all the buzz right now. All the Twitter feeds and the Facebook posts are all locked up in Aaron Rodgers watch for the second year in a row now. So, with that, I guess we'll get to it. A lot of buzz around the Jets, a lot of buzz around the Raiders, a lot of buzz around will he be a Packer? Will he retire? I called it from the beginning. I said if Tom Brady retires, Rodgers isn't retiring. It's just ego driven. There's no way he wants to play second fiddle in Canton. So he's coming back one way or another. It's where he's going to come back to.
Wait, you're telling me that there's some buzz around the NFL that there's already trade teams lined up for 12 when we're still have an NFL season going on and we're 1 week away from a Super Bowl? We just wrapped up the Pro Bowl games, this new reinvented way of doing the Pro Bowl. I don't know if I'm a fan yet of it or not. I still think they should stick with it being a week after the Super Bowl, but you're telling me that similar to Favre back in '07, that there's a lot of uproar about what Rodgers will or won't do here this upcoming season. We're not even in the off season yet.
We're not in the offseason. There's already been like so much news about coaching changes and like Brady retiring that even that's been swept under the rug of where is Rodgers going to be? Like the funny thing is though, like speaking about the Pro Bowl, like I recorded the program today. I couldn't watch all of it, so I recorded it. I switched over to the program instead of the Pro Bowl. Pro Bowl didn't really do much for me today. So I was watching Aaron Rodgers on the golf course today, which could possibly be for the rest of his life now. That could be his competitive itch.
That'll play a bit of a teaser into later on and what are some potential factors on
Yeah.
the new team that he may go into. As far as this episode goes, the best way for us to start it, because I know with our off-season review we didn't really tap into the play of our future Hall of Famer and the best to ever do it in the green and gold when it comes to a quarterback. But it's a real great place for us to start and really dissect his performance here in this past season. Dave, what are your thoughts on 12 and whether it's under meeting expectations
Yeah.
or if you even had to assign a grade to him? What are some of the quick hitters or takeaways with how old Aaron Charles did this past year?
Yeah, he's probably like a C, like a solid C, but like with the thumb, like thumb's a clear excuse. Like I think he plays better without the thumb, without question. Um, he was nicked up this year, but problem is you can't do like C work getting paid $50 million a year. Like that's the kicker. Like with his contract and everything that they were kind of relying him to be on, it's like a D grade for Aaron Rodgers, but it's probably like he's an average quarterback this year compared to everyone else. Um, the progressions worried me. The lack of mobility in the pocket and outside the pocket worried me this year. Mainly the progressions. Some of it could be play calling, if you will, going like 3rd and 2 and saying I want to chuck a 30-yard bomb. But a lot of times there's windows there to be had that usually we see him make, or he just passed up throws to go to other throws. We're used to seeing it for Favre, for those old enough, where Favre didn't read the field. It was purely like, hey, we're going to play backyard football. And then there's the throws where it's like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be a touchdown or an interception. But Rodgers is very precise with his reads, and I feel like that took a major step back this year. It was just him seeing the field and lack of trust, lack of mechanics, all that stuff took a step back. So, I mean, if he wants to do his old saying of, man, I really found something on film this year in the offseason, that I saw, and I really wanted to hone in on that. That completely went out the window this year.
Even going off of that, mechanics taking a hit, his ability to read the defense, and we'll dive into that here later. He brought back his old quarterbacks coach, where he
Yeah.
said a lot in training camp that Tom Clements preaches the fundamentals, and I think it showed a positive effect on J Love and what sort of progression he took in year 3. Rodgers, on the other hand, I thought of it before we hopped on. I've never seen him struggle with checkdowns more than what he did in this year. Like, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and they were expecting Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon to get 50 catches apiece. And here he is, like, throwing a lot of these at their ankles or just clearly missing them. I think that's pretty much a microcosm for a lot of these throws. And we'll give him some credit here for the flashes that he did show with, like, that big dog catch against Miami or that sideline shot play against the Jets. But, I mean, if you can't hit a check down and you're talking about things you've seen in the offseason, how do you expect to have or hold yourself to the standard that you want and getting paid $50 million a year?
So I have a question for you that I was actually thinking about this, and I don't really have a great answer for it, but I want your take on it. What's your thought process on Rodgers having to have familiarity with, like, it seems like with everything, for him to like football, want to play football, be successful at it? Like, you need to bring back his quarterback coach. You need to have Randall Cobb out there. You need to have Lazard out there. You need to have Bach at left tackle. Like, he needs his boys, right? like LaFleur tried to change the play calling, and he's like, I want to go back to like half and half McCarthy, half you, like do a hybrid. Like, he seems like he needs a lot of like kind of, it's like old man stuff, right? It's
we need to pamper him.
It's like your dad getting to a certain age of being like, hey, I'm going to turn into New Balance and like high socks, that type of stuff. Like, oh yeah, this is comfortable. Like, I feel good here. Like, Rodgers does not do well with new, with like changing of the times, all that type of stuff. He's very rigid in what he wants and how he wants it. It's kind of alarming, actually, with a sport that's all about change and bringing in new ideas and new personnel. He does not adapt well to it.
And if there was a season that he needed to come to OTAs, he needed to come to minicamp instead of taking his ayahuasca trips. I don't think he did it this past offseason, but for instance, his ayahuasca or playing more golf with his buddies and doing other things, if there was a season that he needed to be present and gaining familiarity, like you brought up, with his rookie wide receivers, with a veteran who we thought would help to fill maybe a small margin of the shoes of Devontae Adams and Sammy Watkins. Like, if there was ever more of a season that we needed it, Aaron, it was this one. And yet you thought that you could bypass it and you'd have enough time in training camp to even regular season. And they're sitting all throughout the preseason as well, where you hear Tony Romo and Chris Collinsworth say that it's now by about week 4, week 5, that NFL offenses are getting into flow and getting into rhythm. Like, another thing that definitely didn't help the cause is Sammy Watkins and the absolute miss of a free agent wide receiver edition by Gutekunst. I'll say that as one thing to where Rodgers needs his guys. Yes, he had the veteran presence, and it just didn't pan out. Sammy Watkins, it was like every single game, he's running the wrong routes, running the wrong plays every single time.
I mean, I get to a certain aspect of it, like, you need the horses around you, but like, we saw very little of Jordan Love, but the very little we saw of him, Jordan Love had no problem taking a 4-step drop and ripping it into someone. Like, okay, this is my read. Read 1's not there. Oh, read 2. All right, that's my next progression. There's a hole there. I'm gonna just rip it in there. Rodgers is starting to play a lot more patty cake with the ball and looking, and he wants that. He wants the shot play to Devontae that's no longer there. He wants the the Jordy Nelson, I'm on telepathy with you throws that aren't there with, week 4 of a rookie wide receiver. So personnel plays a part, but Rodgers, it's like the old dog with new tricks. I mean, he's kind of stuck in his ways, and I think it's a lot easier for one guy to adjust to, 10 other people than 10 other people to adjust to one person.
Especially when he's not spending time with these people outside of the facilities or the team activities that they do. And what's even crazier to think is too, we've brought it up before, he ran McCarthy out of town. He spent that whole entire 2018 season throwing passes out of bounds. I think you probably could have caught 15 out of bound catches that season, Dave. Similar to Geronimo Allison dropping 15 that year. But like he rode McCarthy out of town. He got his way. He's like, hey, I'm over the West Coast offense. I want something new. LaFleur comes in, and then he's also reluctant upon adapting his offense. I did notice a couple of games, like the Bucs game, the Giants, and there's other ones where he sprinkles in, like what you saw in J Love against the Eagles, where he's going through his progressions, he's getting the ball out quick. He had that at times, especially the first half of the Bucs game. He'd do these RPOs and he'd get it to Cobb, and I'm like, where has that Rodgers been this whole entire time? But it's crazy to think that rode McCarthy out of town, new guy comes in, he's going to accept the offense, win 2 MVPs. Then when things start to go a bit awry or he feels discomfort and frustration, he's just going to revert back to, hey, get me in my recliner, hand me my newspaper, turn on Fox News, and let me doze off into the night.
This had a bit of 18 feel to it, didn't it? Like at a certain point, whereas like he doesn't trust the offense, he doesn't like what they're doing, he doesn't want to necessarily be there. Like it wasn't necessarily throwing it away, but there was a lot of shots called on post-game presses of need to simplify the offense. I didn't like those play calls at the end of the game. Oh, I don't like the motion stuff. And I think looking ahead here, like kind of how Rodgers sat behind Favre for 3 years, and Favre wasn't huge into McCarthy's offense, and then but Rodgers grew up in McCarthy's offense, so he was like, okay, I know this down pat, I got this. Say the same for Love. Love has not known an NFL offense besides LaFleur's. So Love knows all the reads of just, okay, like I know no other way of NFL football. Like this is the read, or this is where my guy's supposed to be. And I think if we go another way here, I think Love will actually show you what LaFleur's offense is all about.
The other thing, too,
which is crazy because going into LaFleur coming in, they said Rodgers is the perfect guy to run LaFleur's offense, but Rodgers never wanted to run LaFleur's offense.
And he did in 2020 and 2021, and he thanked him very graciously in his 4th MVP award honors, where he's like, hey, I could not have done this without you, buddy, and showing a ton of gratitude with it. I will say, though, and this just shows that it's not really our year. So you think about it, like the first quarter of the season, Rodgers is playing some of LaFleur's offense. He's doing the RPOs. He's checking the ball down while he's missing throws. And his receivers just aren't there yet. His rookie receivers still haven't developed. They're still not learning the offense and getting in the flow of it and feeling confident. Then, by the time that Christian Watson, his lights turns on in that Dallas game, Rodgers is dealing with his thumb, and then he doesn't have the pinpoint accuracy of what you're accustomed to. It's like things were meant to be, and the timing was off from the get-go.
Yeah.
By the time that these rookie wide receivers are panning out, then you're dealing with some other sort of circumstance. And then also your offensive line that was in mismatch for a part of the season. And Rodgers still wants to scramble around the yard and have these off-scheduled plays. And you could tell later on during that winning streak that he wanted to make some plays on his own and not just have the offense run through the likes of 33 and 28.
Yeah, you got that right with at least, like, it was all disjointed. Like, probably should have, because LaFleur talked about the bye, like, probably should have taken the bye after the Giants game. we passed up on that opportunity. Rodgers busted up his thumb. Probably, if you think about it, probably would have been best to sit him for a week or two after that and just been like, okay, like Love can handle the Jets. Like we'll deal with that. Like and try to get Rodgers healthy enough. The offense from the very beginning, rough offensive line to start with, definitely needed to lean on the run game that they were unwilling to do, whether that was Rodgers or LaFleur.
We'll never know that answer.
We'll never know. So it was just all messed up. And then you go on this winning streak and you look at it from this point, and I'm never going to apologize for winning. I love watching exciting football games where my team wins. So, but you lose one more game in that and you get to experience Love for a week or two. Like,
and then we truly know what we have in him and whether or not we should commit for the following season.
Right. So it was just all sorts of, this was the best, worst case scenario for the Packers. You basically run the table to get a chance to make the playoffs and you don't make the playoffs. Like, you can even argue it would be a success if we made the playoffs and got bounced in the wild card. Okay, we ran the table into the playoffs. But basically, this was the best, worst season ever.
Best case, worst case scenario. Yeah. Me as a fan and, carrying the G, I know you're on that same thing. We love wins. We're never going to root against the Packers.
Yeah.
I'm content with the way that things panned out. Wish J Love would have been able to get some starts, but hey, by the time that Dolphins game and then the Minnesota Vikings game, those wins, like there was.
Oh, chef kiss.
Yeah.
The Vikings ones especially, man.
That Vikings game is one that I'll remember for years to come, and one that, by the way, I have a book coming that my dad recommended to me. Speaking of your elder generations and reverting to elderman syndrome, there's a book from Jerry Kramer, and it talks about how one of the last games that they knew it was over for their run with Lombardi and everything else. It was a bit of like a send-off or a farewell. My dad called that Minnesota Vikings game the end of an era that the fans may or may not have known. The football gods and everything else came aligned that day, just as once, like you said, a chef's kiss to the end of the Rodgers era. Too bad it didn't come against the Lions, but that game is one that I sure wish I could have been there in person. I know you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could go to every game in Lambeau, but that's not the case.
Can I ask one question before moving on to what lies ahead? Feelings from the front office and what's going through 12's head. You've heard me be an advocate through this first season of Packers on the Rocks for Aaron Rodgers under center and the play action fakes and the guitar fake that he had with the Hackett. Is that something that you're a big fan of as well, and you see a lot more productivity and flow within the offense when we're getting 12 or whomever under center, and then having the running game lead through that, and especially helps for Christian Watson game, or is it just my sort of prerogative and thinking back to my childhood and how Favre was under center almost all of it?
So I think times have changed a little bit. Like, I think it's just more gun. I think a lot of Rodgers wasn't quite in that camp, but like you see like the Justin Fields and the Lamars of like they grew up from high school to college to pros where they were always in the gun. Rodgers wasn't quite like that. But I think that even like early in his career, Rodgers, when he did that play action fake deep roll out to the right, he did Jordy with the corner post, like that was the money play, right? And then even with like Devontae doing play action off it, I think he's better under center. Like I think just even when the Packers weren't good at running the ball, they at least ran it like 20 times a game, and whether the production wasn't like fantastic or not, they still like the shotgun is just no bueno, because even shotgun runs didn't net us anything great this year.
And it doesn't help A.J. Dillon either. That's not his running style. And when we look back, because I do want to put together like a top 10 of Rodgers' best throws, I would like to think that there's a pretty healthy percentage of those plays that are from him under center. I say that, but then I think of when you have the 2011 team, you don't need to be under center. When you have all of those weapons that can win their one-on-one battles, and you just really have to choose, hey, I want to attack this nickel cornerback or this dime cornerback. But I will, and I always will be a big advocate. If I was running the Floors offense, you're getting up underneath them butt cheeks about 60% of the time.
I think part of it this year, though, was he didn't want to jam his thumb under center. Like, I think the thumb was bothering him that much where he just didn't want to feel the, ball just hit against it every single snap.
Makes sense. Moving on, though, to what lies ahead and what are we even going to do with 12? Like, that's the $50 million. It's even more because I know that you'll enlighten us upon the cap ramifications of this.
Yeah.
But Rodgers mentioned this a few times because a lot of Packer fans have thought Aaron Rodgers is holding us hostage. He holds all the cards in this. When he's really said, though, it's totally a mutual call where he won't hold any ill will, but it does take two to tango in this. So starting with the front office's perspective of it, Gutekunst, the real estate man, and Mark Murphy, who loves to fill the seats with fans because of 12 and build his Titletown district across the street and focus on real estate and revenue. What's the front office thinking right now, Dave? Put yourself in the shoes of Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy, who have to make this call right now.
Do you want me to go cap first, or do you want me to go which direction do you want me to go? Do you want me to go cap first, or kind of the Packers have leverage that people don't see first?
Let's pretend at first, just because I don't have a math brain at all, so I'm about as opposite of Rain Man as you found out earlier. Let's pretend that Russ Ball didn't come into the conference room, and it's just Gutekunst and Mark Murphy.
Okay.
They understand a bit of the cap, but
Gotcha.
they're going based upon emotion and what they've seen the past few years on tape.
So I think they have a pretty good idea of what they like in terms of Rodgers sat behind Favre for 3 years. Love's going to sit behind Rodgers for 3 years. You're going to do your internship. You're going to do your apprenticeship, however you want to call it, and be like, here's the key to his cars after this. Like, you've sat long enough. Because I think part of the equation is Love's going to demand a trade this year. Like, if Love's not the starting quarterback in Green Bay, his agent's going to be like, you got to cut us loose here before he gets his 5th year. Like, you got to demand a trade here. I think they like what they see in Love. I think they're tired of Rodgers, will he, won't he, part 2. I think they're looking at a football team that next year, even if the cap's part of it, but next year, you're looking at a squad that probably will be roughly the same record, even with the same pieces coming back. If you don't add anyone, we're going to be sitting at the same record, and they can't add anyone in free agency based on the cap. So you're looking at an aging quarterback with a young quarterback that you like, with a lot of drama surrounding 12. And I think they're kind of just it's time to turn a page. You're not going to get the same draft capital as you would have last year, but I think part of what they would part with is the fans are more on the front office's side now. Last year, if you traded a 2-time MVP, it was going to be fans are going to be pissed off. And this year, it's kind of more 60-40. Fans are kind of could be 60-40, could be 50-50, where it's kind of you could get rid of them, we won't care. So I think that the PR part plays a part in it.
And I think I've said it once, and I'll say it for a final time. Brian Gutekunst, I think, fully believed that based upon that 49ers playoff loss and one of the best performances that the defense has ever done, I've even seen. I don't know if I've ever seen a better playoff defensive performance than that. Maybe something from 2010 with the Eagles or the Falcons. But anywho, based upon that performance, Gutekunst was under the impression that, hey, if I can have a top 5 defense, there's no way that we can't get to the same stage, if not later, if we bring Rodgers back, who gives us our best shot at winning, after seeing what J. Love did in Kansas City, filling in when Rodgers had COVID. So I'd have to say I agree with Gutekunst from that standpoint, is that I thought heading into the season, we're when you take a look at what are maybe 5 teams that got a shot at taking this thing home, the Packers included upon that, but our defense didn't live up to the hype that they had on paper, and your veteran acquisition of Sammy Watkins wasn't it, and your rookie wide receivers took longer to develop, which you probably should have anticipated knowing Rodgers. So from that last year's move, I think it made sense for Gutekunst. As for this year, different story. It's no longer a reload at all.
No, I my thought process has been the windows have been 2010 to 2014. Then you took a break. Then the window was again 2019 to 2021, and I didn't expect anything to really happen this year. But now that we're in this kind of boat, I don't see a window. Like, you have to restart to create a new window. That's where we're at. If you continue with Rodgers, there will be no window. Like, the window would be probably 2 years from now. Like, either you restart with Love, or if Love's not the guy, you draft a quarterback and you create a new window with cap space and draft capital. That's how you create a new window. But going forward with Rodgers, there's no window for a championship.
You want to know what's scary to think? We started to see and brought up like the farewell game of the Vikings. But between that game along with the Lions game, there was a lot of purple in the crowd, and there was a lot of blue in the crowd, which is signs of things to come. Mark Murphy has to think about getting butts in them seats and selling out Lambeau at capacity. Will it continue to happen? I think so, and there's enough attractions around Green Bay to do it. Tell you what, though, there's going to be a lot of opposing fans that are inside Lambeau here within these next 5 years or whatever this down window is.
I mean, I'll gladly take the pilgrimage to Lambeau more often if it's cheaper seats because we're struggling. But
me too. After spending $500 a pop for that week 2 Bears game.
I will say I did watch live. Thanks to Karen, my wife, she bought us the tickets, but she got us the only game that we saw Rodgers' perfect passer rating, the Oakland game at Lambeau.
In 19?
Yeah.
That was his 5 touchdown game.
Yep. That was a sweet one.
And then LaFleur was mic'd up on the sidelines, and maybe this is a little bit of reminiscing because we know that Rodgers is likely done, but he's like, and the old man ran for one.
See, I didn't have the earbuds in during the game, buddy, so I wasn't catching on what he was saying on the sideline.
I would have figured that you had front row seats and you could hear LaFleur.
We were pretty close. We were like third row, like 40-yard line. It was pretty sweet.
That was a good game by MVS too. I remember that long, like 70-yard touchdown. Shout out MVS for balling out in another NFC Championship game.
Aaron Jones caught a sweet one in the corner.
I can think back to it. All right. So now 12 side of it all.
Yeah.
You're in Rodgers' Malibu house.
Oh, I forgot one last point of that front office was
from the cap side.
No, not cap side. Everyone says Rodgers in the driver's seat. If Rodgers says I want to play, the Packers don't want him. They can say, hey, we're going to trade you to Oakland. Or it wouldn't be Oakland because Rodgers would want to go to Oakland to be with Devontae. Say we're going to trade you to Miami or the Texans, whatever it is. I don't want to play for the Texans. The front office would be like, okay, retire. Well, I want to play. Okay, then you're going to the Texans. That forces Rodgers' hands. So it's either you're going to retire and sit out a year or 2 until your contract ends, and then you could sign with whoever you want, or you're going to go to wherever we trade you to. But we don't want you anymore.
And you're 100% on that, Dave. This goes to like the Pat McAfee show where they brought that up to Aaron about a no trade clause in his contract, and he had to think about it a second. And I'm thinking, I'm like,
dude,
the thing is, though, think about how Aaron Rodgers is one of the most cerebral quarterbacks that has ever graced the gridiron. And to think that he wouldn't include a trade clause in his contract to prevent what you had just brought up, like that's a pretty like finesse type move by the Packers. If they were able to pull that off and get him to agree to those terms, because that means that the front office holds all the cards. And I had thought, just don't bring back Bakhtiari somehow or Cobb or his friendship, so then he's sitting in his locker alone and he's not doing TikToks with the 22-year-olds.
I think part of it is they're not going to bring back his boys, but I think part of it is we could trade you wherever you want. So you either have to go where we're sending you, or you could retire.
So based upon knowing that, and Rodgers likely having talked about this with his agent, I mean they had to have starting those talks, even though he's at the hey, I want to take my mind off football. We saw at the Pebbleboro Peach Jam or whatever the heck you're calling that thing.
You want to know
he's still entertaining. He's eating up the fans and all that. But anyways,
yeah.
from all right, so Rodgers knows this. Once again we're putting him in and putting yourself in the thought process. What's he thinking right now?
Rodgers?
Yeah.
Oh, I think he's thinking. Well, I think it's two-part. I think it's like there could be an oh shit moment where I don't want to retire and be in Canton with Brady at the same time. But besides that point, there is a point in Rodgers where I think if he doesn't want to go somewhere that's not a good fit with him, I think he'd be content with just walking away. I could see that. But I don't think retirement's high. I think retirement's like 5%. But I could see him be like, I really don't want to go to the Colts. I really don't want to go to the Texans. I don't want to go to like Washington. Like, yeah, I'm done. Interesting fact you brought up agents. Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers had the same agent.
I did not know that.
So that is also very interesting.
And speaking of which, Jay Love needs to be thankful for the Packers. If he was drafted by any other team, his career is now likely over, and he's becoming a Baker Mayfield or a Sam Darnold or one other quarterback that was drafted too high, and then they were thrown to the Wolves, and now they're a backup quarterback for the rest of their career. I get it that he wants to play and demand. That's a whole different episode.
Yeah.
So if you're Rodgers, you're thinking that doesn't want to be in the limelight sharing with Tom Brady, but he also doesn't want to suffer through a year with teams that he has no interest in going with. Which you think it's the Colts? Or what teams do you think Rodgers would scoff at and be like, nope, I'm retiring. I'm done.
What teams do I think he lands and he actually goes, or what teams are on his like oh shit list?
They're on the oh shit list. That's part of this pro-con list that he comes up with for coming back versus not, that him and AJ Hawk are going.
There's too many of the oh shit list. I really think, and everyone that's been on the internet over the last 3 weeks knows, it's probably the Jets, it's the Raiders, it's the Dolphins. I think Patriots could come into play. There's some ego stuff with that. With I don't want to go into the house that Brady built, but he loves Belichick. I don't think Belichick's sold on Mac Jones.
What about the Titans? Him and Vrabel ripping darts after practice.
I haven't heard the Titans. That'd be an interesting one.
I could see that as being another potential dark horse.
But yeah, I mean, the Texans have a high pick. I don't see them doing it, but like, let's put it this way. I think there's like a 5% chance he retires. I think there's like honestly like a 65% chance he's traded. And I think there's like a 30% chance that he like stays with the Packers at this point. Because he's loving where are you going? And he's eating it up. Like, hey, you going to San Fran? No, I'm not going there. Oh, Raider Nation. Hell yeah, brother. Like, he's eating this attention up.
That's not a man who sounds like he's going to come on the Pat McAfee show and tell everybody that he's retiring a week after the Super Bowl on that Tuesday. No. All right, so now the teams that he is in favor of, which, if you ask me, he's coming back under the condition of he thinks he can return to MVP form, which Gronk took a shot at him for, and also a team that is potentially Super Bowl ready. I mean, I'm sure he would love to go into a Tom Brady type environment where he went to the Bucs, and that team was like stout on defense, Pro Bowlers all around. They had like 3 number 1 wide receivers. People love to give Tom Brady praise about that 7th ring, and I don't know. I'll knock him a little bit because I think that was one of the better teams he's ever been on. But like, you also have to take that into account. So out of those teams, like, who really has a shot of helping him to get over that hump and into the Super Bowl?
My bad. I just did your last question on what you asked of the oh shit teams. But the top 3 that come to mind are the Raiders, Jets, and and Miami. I think Miami has the offense that he likes. I think the Jets have the coaching situation, the defense, and young receivers that are actually developed. Like they're in year 2 or 3 now, like that he can like. And then if he goes to the Raiders, it's okay. I have all these weapons now. If there's a trade, some of those weapons might come to Green Bay, such as like Waller or Humphrey or something like that. Like, but he's like, okay, I got Devontae. If they don't trade Waller, I got Waller.
He's got third and Renfro.
I'm out
Josh
back kind
Jacobs
of.
is probably gone.
I'm back towards the West Coast. Um,
He
I
gets to,
mean,
he gets to hit the links in November and December and
yeah,
January.
yeah. I think you would die and go to heaven if you went to San Fran, but there's no way Green Bay is going to San Fran. Like San Fran has no quarterbacks at this point. I don't think they think Trey Lance is their guy. Brock Purdy just got hurt. He's having Tommy John. I think that'd be his like standard of like, hey, you passed on me in the first round. I was a Montana guy. I want to go here, but there's no way Green Bay's eating like even considering that offer.
If he goes to San Fran, I would put them as Super Bowl favorite. They have enough. I'll tell you what, if Brock Purdy wouldn't have gotten hurt, and I think the Eagles' offensive line is enough to win them the Super Bowl
Yeah,
and the defense they have. But look how far Brock Purdy took them, and we know Aaron Rodgers can do a little bit more than Brock Purdy. And that team was just about on the cusp of the Super Bowl with Mr. Irrelevant himself. So the Raiders, it sounds like there's enough to get him there, and there's just the familiarity with Tay, where that's obviously going to be his number one pick. And don't sleep
yeah.
on Bryce Hall from the Jets. I see him as a potential top 5 back here in this
All right.
league. So would that boil down then to really the Raiders, the Jets, and the Dolphins? We're going to be calling up to Brian Gutekunst saying, hey, we want him. What's it going to take?
The best case scenario is 2 of the 3 teams or 3 out of 3 teams get into a bidding war, and the Packers are like, okay, like let's finally hear it, and the price just gets too good to pass up. I'm not in the camp of 2 first rounders, 3 first rounders, 2 firsts and a second. I think it'll be second and a fourth, with maybe it being a conditional first, possibly, or like a first and a fifth. I don't think you get multiple first rounders. I think it's kind of like a possibly a first, most likely a second, and like a mid rounder, like a third, fourth, or fifth. I wouldn't prefer the third from past experiences, but
Trade it. Just get rid of it. I don't care. We'll give it away for peanuts.
But if he would have done last year, he would have gotten the Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford deal.
And we would have won 6 games this year and would have been in a much
Yeah.
better position. I get it. You kick the can or you roll the dice and you try to double down on 12, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We've been really good about parting ways with players at the right time, a year rather than a year too late. Rodgers.
Yeah.
This could be different. And I was reading something here before this that this year is completely different. I mean, if you're an NFL team, are you likely to give up a true first-round pick for a guy that may or may not be here the following year? So that conditional pick could be really key in this. I would love to get another player for it. As long as you give me a second-round pick for Rodgers that could turn into a first, I would call today. You're also taking on his salary cap hit as well, which I know can be restructured. And then, Dave, I think you had brought up before that regardless of what happens, we're kind of effed. And we have a dead cap hit of 40-something million, whether he retires or gets traded.
Yeah, so the interesting thing with Rodgers' cap is if he retires or is traded this year, it's a $40 million cap hit on the Packers. It's dead. Like he can't do it. It's a dead cap hit. You can't do anything with it. So he has a $32 million cap hit this year. But if he gets cut or traded, or not cut, if he gets traded or he retires, it turns into $40 million. So you're only eating an extra 8. The interesting thing is though, if you trade him, the team that takes him on is not $40 million. It's only $16 million.
And we take on the remainder.
We take on the 40. So it's not like the team that's taking him on is getting like, oh, it's going to be a $50 million cap hit for them. It's only $16 million. The Packers are taking on 40 of it. But after this year, it turns into, if he retires or is traded next year, it's 69 million. The year after that, it's 75 million.
Which makes
So
you
this
think that there's no way that the Packers want him back this year, knowing that they're
no
not going to get the Super Bowl,
financially no.
and then also financially for what Russ Ball is going to be knocking on the door saying, "Hey, you
Yeah,
understand the ramifications if you bring him back, and there's a six, and then another number, and then a lot of
yeah,
zeros that come there after it."
yeah. So it definitely this is the best time to do it would have been last year, but this is the second best option. You do it this year, you eat the 40 million, you get a year of evaluating Love, you get a year of evaluating contracts of if Love's not the guy, we have to get a first round quarterback next year. And you get like evaluation of do we want to bring back Aaron Jones? Do we want to bring back POTR? Like all these monster cap hits that you want to get rid of. You get to look at it and say, hey, we're not going to be in contention. Let's start cutting guys. Let's start trading guys. Let's start releasing guys and kind of rebuild here.
And it is somewhat similar to 2008, completely different cap situation, but there are some key core guys around the team that are in their prime and will be for still a number of years. You have Jair that just signed,
Mm-hmm.
Rashawn, if we can bring him back as well. You have Elton
Got
that was just
Jenkins.
locked up. You have Bakhtiari. That's for a whole nother episode. Dave, last question for you before we close this out. If this is it for Rodgers, what are going to be your thoughts about his career with the Green Bay Packers and what he's done for this franchise and yourself as a fan? That's
You're
like the
still
same
great.
same same question as
Yeah.
the beat writers posed on Rodgers, like, hey, if that's your last time walking out of Lambeau,
Yeah.
what will you remember?
You're still grateful for all of it, man. I mean, only one team wins the Super Bowl every year, right? And I think Brady skewed things of winning 7 Super Bowls where I mean, he has more Super Bowls than any other franchise. So I think he skewed it where, oh, he only has one turns into something. I mean, we experienced 12-4, 13-3 so many times. We experienced Hail Marys. Um, I would say this Favre got me into football. Rodgers got me to understand football. I think that's the best way I could put it. Like, Favre was youth and just like, hey, like this is cool, like backyard with my buddies. And Favre and Rodgers was very like, holy crap, that's how you put it through a window. That's how you call an audible. That's how you like dissect a defense. Like that's how you take care of the football. Like, and then he just had the ability to just make ridiculous throws. Like I mean, he's called the best thrower of the football for a reason. Um,
I'll stand behind that next to Dan Marino. They're to me that's one and two, but I didn't get to watch Dan. I've only seen highlights.
yeah, right. So, um,
Dave, you're forgetting upon which I like to think that Rodgers was ahead of schedule for this and the trend that came, but used to be that 2 minute drive that John Elway coined. Like 2 minutes, you need at least 2 minutes on the clock, and then it got to be where like, hey,
oh,
you at least needed a minute and change. Aaron Rodgers, all you need is maybe 30 seconds on that clock for
yeah,
him to be able to push you down the field to at least get a field goal or even a touchdown.
yeah. I mean,
Aaron Rodgers, you have spoiled us. You have showed us almost the perfection at the position and to why we hold you to such a high standard to where now we're incredibly critical of your play and your potential last season.
yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, you're everyone is eventually replaceable. It's sad to see, but I mean, he gave us great moments. There's no denying that. I mean, and there's times where you feel bad for the guy because the defense didn't hold up. But I mean, how many times did we see Rodgers score a touchdown with a minute and 30 seconds left on the clock and the defense just couldn't hold it down? But he definitely gave us the wild throws, gave us a bunch of entertaining games. I mean, that's the nice thing. He always kept us in a game, right? It was always entertaining football. We never, very rarely saw a 40-12 game.
It's like he did it to himself. He sort of shot himself in the foot by 2011. I'm going to play the best year an NFL quarterback has ever done. Ted Thompson's like, okay, we can be able to put this whole franchise on this guy's back. We don't have to really worry about putting a defense around him. And the next 3 or 4, 2014, I know we had a defense, but then there afterwards. There's some playoff losses in there where Aaron Rodgers will take the blame for it, but you can't put it on him. So Dave, would you say this is a bit of a send off? Are we cheersing Aaron Rodgers at this point? Like you said, what, like a 20-something% chance that he comes back in the green and gold? Like, would you go as far as to do a toast to our 4-time MVP, putting on the championship belt, the Super Bowl winner,
Yeah, I
the
think
RELAX man?
uh, I think we'll get a much better picture leading into draft week. But for now, I just don't see how they bring him back. But I mean, I never say never. I mean, he might walk into Lambeau for July training camp, and we'll all be here doing episodes of Aaron Rodgers again. And by week one, we'll be like, oh man, Aaron Rodgers is the bad man. So I'm not gonna never say never.
I shouldn't say never either, because I remember when Favre retired for the first time and he wanted to come back, and I was at training camp that year to watch a preseason game or just to go to some practices. My dad and myself bought a T-shirt that said "Fire Ted Thompson" because he didn't want to bring Brett Favre back.
Yeah.
I think that says it all.
All right, bud. Hey, it's been a couple weeks. It's good talking to you. We might get some news in the next week or two here. Um, but yeah, man, always good chatting with you, having a drink, and till next time.
Likewise. Cheers, Dave.